Listen to The Time Machine by Herbert Wells. Level B1. Oxford Reading University. Part 3. You will find Part 1 here. You will find Part 2 here.
We left the palace at sunset and headed toward the statue. We were tired and moved very slowly. By the time we reached the forest, it was already deep into the night. I knew the Morlocks were there, preparing to attack, but we had to take a risk and go through the forest. To scare off the enemies, I gathered some dry wood and made a fire. Then I held Weena's hand tight, and we ran into the forest. The deeper into the dark we moved, the more frightened I grew. All I could hear was the cracking sound under my feet and my own breathing. If I slowed down, a Morlock's hairy hand immediately caught hold of my leg or arm. I made a small fire to frighten them away, and we sat down to rest. I was so tired that I fell asleep, despite myself. I woke up to someone holding me tightly by the throat. The fire had gone out, and plenty of Morlocks were jumping at me, biting me, and leaving bloody injuries on my skin. Weena was gone, and I knew I would never see her again. I was overtaken by the excitement that so often comes in the middle of battle. I reached for my weapon and waved it in the air. I could feel the ugly creature's bones break and hear their horrible shouts. But suddenly, they stopped attacking and ran for their lives in horror. At first, I thought that I drove them off. How silly of me! Actually, they were running away from the fire, which was spreading quickly through the forest and soon consumed it whole. Unlike my enemies, I was completely lost in the dark and didn't know where to run, so I decided to follow the Morlocks. Because of them, I managed to find my way out of the forest and escape the fire. The sun rose and I threw myself on the ground, falling into a heavy sleep. I woke up at sunset, determined to reclaim my time machine. I took a tighter hold of my weapon and headed toward the Sphinx statue. To my surprise, I found the pedestal panels wide open. My machine was standing right beside them. I realized what my enemy's plan was. They wanted to trap me, but little did they know of my incredible machine. Without thinking twice, I stepped inside. I wasn't frightened at all as the heavy panels behind my back were shut, and the violent creatures attacked me from the dark. Fighting them off with my arms and legs, I pulled both levers with all my might. The Morlocks disappeared as I moved forward into time.
I think you forgot to like this video. Do it now to support our channel.
9. I rushed forward into the future. I saw the sun expand in size and slow down in movement, and the moon grow smaller, then disappearing completely. I flew millions of years into the future and pulled the stop lever. I found myself on a rocky beach. The sea waters were perfectly still, and the dark red sun, many times its regular size, seemed to be burning out. I concluded that the Earth had stopped going around the sun. The surface around me was covered with dark green plants. A giant butterfly flew past my machine. There were plenty of huge pink rocks on the beach, and suddenly I saw one of them move. It was not a rock. but a creature that reminded me of a crab. It had many legs and long antennae sticking out of its head. Something touched my face, and I turned to see another crab reaching out toward me with its leg. I pulled the lever in horror, rushing further into the future. The sun kept expanding and eventually covered most of the sky. A few million years later, I found myself on the same beach, but the ugly crabs were gone. Everything seemed to be gone. I was thrown into the biting cold. Snow was everywhere, and the water by the coast was covered with a thick layer of ice. The sun was blocked by another large object, maybe a planet. Eventually, total darkness and frightening silence overtook the world. My blood ran cold. I heard a splash in the water and looked hard into the darkness. I noticed a small, round creature with tentacles that was coming close to me quickly, jumping high above the water. I pulled the lever and traveled back through time. The farther back I went, the easier I breathed, the brighter the sky became. It wasn't long before I began to recognize the familiar buildings of my hometown. Eventually, I found myself in my laboratory and pulled the lever to stop. When I got out of the machine, it took me a long time to come to my senses. I walked out of the laboratory to hear your voices, and this is the end of my story.
Send this video to your friends if they like learning English.
10. The time traveler fell silent. Neither of us said a word. Some time passed before the newspaper editor said quietly, "If you were a writer, you would make a lot of money with your stories." "So you don't believe me?" replied the time traveler. "Just as I expected. I must admit that I hardly believe all this myself." He pulled some flowers out of his pocket and showed them to us. "I have never seen such flowers before," cried the doctor. "Where did you get them?" "Weena put them in my pocket on our way to the Green Palace," he answered, and everyone fell silent. "I must check on my time machine," the time traveler finally said, and we followed him into the laboratory. It was the same machine we had seen before, except that it was badly damaged and covered in dirt. My friends were convinced that he was just a madman, but I wasn't so sure. When I came home, horrible thoughts filled my mind. I was so uneasy that I went to check on the time traveler the next evening. I found him in a great hurry on his way to the laboratory. He was holding a large bag in one hand and a camera in the other. "My friend," he cried, "I must be gone now, but if you wait for my return, I will bring you something from the world of the future. Give me half an hour and I will prove to you that time travel is possible." With these words, he entered the laboratory and the doors closed behind him. Since then, 3 years have passed and the time traveler has never returned. I don't know where he is, but I frequently think about him and his adventures. Where is he now? What mysteries has he discovered? Will I ever see him again? All I have left of him are 2 strange white flowers that have gone dry. To me, they represent the compassion and fellowship of humans, no matter what time they live in.
Do you want more English audiobooks with translations and transcriptions? Check out app iwa.com. You can read books and learn new words every day. And now, enjoy another English story.